The first time I said, "You are not supposed to be here." My husband was standing in my living room with a stolen key and a court order that said he had no right to breathe my air anymore. The second time I said it, two police officers stood behind him, body cams blinking red. If you have ever had someone bet on your pain like it is a party game, stay with me. My name is Eden Garcia. If you looked at the police report filed later that night, you would see that name typed out in stark, black letters next to the word victim. But as I stood in the shadows of the hallway in my new apartment at Ridgeview Heights, I did not feel like a victim. I felt like a hunter who had finally set the perfect trap. It was exactly 2:17 in the morning. The kind of silence that fills a luxury high-rise at that hour is heavy and expensive. There were no sirens wailing in the distance, no neighbors arguing through thin walls. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the rhythmic, almost imperceptible throb of the security camera mounted in the corner of the ceiling. I watched that little red light blink. 1, 2, 3. It was the only heartbeat in the room that I could see, but it was not the only one I could feel. My own heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage, but my hands were steady, stone steady. I held my phone in my right hand, the screen dimmed to the lowest setting, the voice recording app already running. The timer on the screen counted the seconds of silence. 0 minutes and 45 seconds. 0 minutes and 46 seconds. I was not breathing, or at least, I was trying not to. I stood perfectly still in the blind spot between the kitchen island and the hallway leading to the bedroom. I was wearing dark pajamas, blending into the shadows that I had curated for this exact moment. I had turned off every light in the apartment except for the under-cabinet LEDs in the kitchen, which cast just enough of a glow to illuminate the entryway, just enough so the camera would catch his face clearly. Then, I heard it. The sound was soft, metallic, and terrifyingly familiar. It was the sound of a key sliding into a lock. But it was not my key. I had changed the locks the day I moved in. I had paid the locksmith $300 extra for a high-security deadbolt that was supposed to be unpickable, but the man on the other side of the door did not need to pick the lock. He had something better. He had a master key, the kind of key that belongs to a building superintendent or a maintenance manager, the kind of key a charming, manipulative man could talk a low-level employee into lending him for $50 and a sob story about a surprise anniversary gift. The tumbler turned. Click. My stomach dropped, a physical sensation of vertigo, but I planted my feet wider on the hardwood floor. This was it, the moment I had played out in my head 1,000 times. The door handle depressed slowly. He was trying to be quiet. He was trying to be a ghost. The heavy door swung inward on silent hinges, revealing a slice of the fluorescent-lit hallway outside. Liam Carter stepped into my apartment. He looked exactly the same as he had the last time I saw him, which was only 4 days ago in a courtroom where a judge told him to stay 500 feet away from me at all times. He was wearing his signature navy blue windbreaker and dark jeans. He looked casual. He looked comfortable. He looked like a man coming home after a late shift, not a man breaking into his ex-wife's sanctuary. He did not close the door immediately. He stood on the threshold, his head pivoting left, then right. He was scanning the space. He was looking for signs of life. He was looking for me, but he did not expect to find me awake. He did not expect to find me at all. He took a step inside, his sneakers squeaking faintly on the polished floor. He closed the door behind him with a soft click. "She is not supposed to be here yet," he muttered. The words were barely a whisper, but in the dead silence of the apartment, they sounded like a shout. He sounded annoyed, not guilty, not afraid, just annoyed, as if my potential presence was a scheduling error that inconvenienced him. He thought I was staying at my mother's house 3 hours away. He thought he had the weekend to plant whatever evidence he wanted to plant, or take whatever he wanted to take, or maybe just sit on my couch and breathe my air to prove that he still could. He walked past the kitchen island. He was 5 feet away from me. I could smell him. That expensive sandalwood cologne mixed with the stale scent of mint gum. It used to be the smell of safety. Now, it smelled like a violation, I stepped out of the shadows. I did not lunge. I did not scream. I just moved one step forward, into the pool of dim light from the kitchen cabinets. I raised my phone, the recording timer now at 3 minutes and 12 seconds. "You are not supposed to be here," I said. My voice did not shake. It was cold, flat, and factual. It was the voice of a woman who was done negotiating. Liam spun around so fast he almost lost his balance. The expression on his face was a masterpiece of disintegration. First, there was the shock, the primal startle response of an animal caught in the open. His eyes went wide, his mouth dropped open. Then came the confusion. He blinked, trying to reconcile the Eden he thought he knew, the quiet, accommodating mouse with the woman standing before him in the dark. But then, the realization hit. His eyes flicked to the phone in my hand. Then they darted up to the corner of the ceiling, where the red light of the security camera blinked. Blink, blink, blink. The color drained from his face so fast it looked like a physical effect. He went from flush to the color of printer paper in a single second. He knew the law. He knew exactly what that piece of paper in his glove compartment said. Violation of a restraining order. Criminal trespassing. Stalking. He took a step back, his hands coming up in a gesture that was half surrender, half defense. "Eden," he croaked. His voice was dry, cracking. "Eden, wait. You are 500 feet too close." "Liam," I said, keeping the phone steady. "I just wanted to check on you," he stammered, the lie falling out of his mouth out of habit. I thought, "You used a master key." I cut him off. "You bypassed the security desk. You are in my home." "Eden, put the phone down. Let's just talk. I can explain." "There is nothing to explain to me," I said. "But you can explain it to them." Bam, bam, bam. The knocking on the door was not polite. It was the authoritative, heavy-handed pounding of law enforcement. It shook the frame. Police opened the door. Liam flinched as if he had been struck. He whipped his head toward the door, then back to me. The terror in his eyes was absolute. For the first time in our 10-year history, he was the one who was trapped. He was the one who was small. "Eden, what did you do?" he whispered, the arrogance completely gone, replaced by a frantic, childish plea. I did not answer him. I walked past him, keeping a wide arc, ensuring he could not reach me without lunging, and I unlocked the door. 2 uniformed officers and the building's night security manager filled the doorway. Their radios crackled with static and dispatch codes. The officers stepped in, hands resting near their belts, eyes immediately locking onto Liam. "Liam Carter," the lead officer asked. It was not really a question. Liam looked at me one last time. He looked for the woman who used to apologize when he stepped on her toes. He looked for the wife who would lie to protect his reputation. He looked for the girl who believed him when he said he was the only thing holding her together. He did not find her. I watched as they turned him around. I watched the metal cuffs click around his wrists. I watched him realize that he was the intruder in a life he thought he owned. You are probably wondering how we got here. You are looking at this scene, the flashing lights reflecting off the granite countertops, the handcuffs, the man who looks like his world has just ended, and you are wondering how a marriage that started with champagne toasts and promises ended with a felony arrest in a dark kitchen at 2 a.m. If you have ever been told that you are crazy for noticing things that do not add up, listen close. If you have ever been told that you would be nothing without someone else's guidance, stay with me. If you have ever had someone bet on your pain like it is a party game, I am going to show you exactly how I went from apologizing for existing in my own house to watching my husband realize he had walked into a cage of his own making. But it did not start here. It did not start with handcuffs and cameras and restraining orders. It did not start with the cold satisfaction of watching him being read his rights while I stood sipping water. It started with jokes that sounded like love. It started 7 years ago, on a patio in late September, when the air was crisp, and I still thought I was the luckiest woman in the world, because Liam Carter had chosen me. I was 35 years old when I stopped recognizing the woman in the mirror, but the erasure happened so slowly that I mistook it for settling down. At the time, I was the operations manager for Lumagate Dynamics, a mid-sized financial technology firm that prided itself on logic, precision, and security. My entire career was built on the ability to spot inefficiencies and correct them. I was pragmatic. I was the woman who had a 5-year plan for her 401k and a backup generator for the house. I did not believe in fairy tales, but I believed in Liam Carter. In the beginning, we were the couple that people stopped to look at. We were stable. We were successful. Liam was the charisma to my calculation, the spontaneous energy to my structured planning. He had a way of walking into a room and making the air feel lighter, as if his presence alone was a gift he was generous enough to share. I bathed in that light. I felt lucky to be the one he went home to. The first cut did not feel like a wound. It felt like a punchline. It was a dinner party in late October at a steakhouse downtown, the kind with white tablecloths and waiters who scrape the crumbs off the table between courses. We were celebrating his promotion to regional director. The table was full of his colleagues and their wives, a circle of successful, smiling people. Liam had his arm draped over the back of my chair, his fingers idly tracing the strap of my dress. The conversation had turned to long-term relationships and how rare they were becoming. Someone, I think it was his boss, raised a glass and said, "To Liam, who managed to lock down the smartest woman in the room." It was a compliment. I smiled, feeling the warmth of the wine and the praise. Then Liam laughed. It was that rich baritone laugh that everyone loved. He squeezed my shoulder, just a little too hard, and said, "Careful now. You know I could trade her in for a younger model tomorrow, right?" The market is booming. The table erupted in laughter. It was a collective, boisterous sound. I laughed too. That is the part that haunts me when I look back. I laughed. I forced the corners of my mouth up. I made the appropriate sound of a good sport. But inside, my stomach had turned to ice. I looked at him, waiting for the wink. The squeeze of the hand that meant, "I am just kidding. You are my world." The wink never came. He was already reaching for his scotch, basking in the attention. Having successfully shifted the power dynamic of the conversation, he had reminded everyone, and specifically me, that I was replaceable. I told myself I was being sensitive. I told myself that is just how men talk. But the jokes did not stop. They became the background music of our life. They migrated from private dinners to company holiday parties, then to backyard barbecues and happy hours. They were never overtly cruel, which made them impossible to fight. If I got upset, I was the one with no sense of humor. I was the buzzkill. Eden would lose her head if it was not screwed on tight. He would say to our neighbors while I was standing right there, holding the tray of burgers I had perfectly seasoned. "Do not mind her," he would tell his friends when I tried to discuss politics or news. "She thinks watching a documentary makes her an expert." It was a slow, methodical dismantling of my confidence. It was psychological erosion. I started to change my behavior to avoid the commentary. There was a blue silk dress I loved, a dress that made me feel powerful and vibrant. We were getting ready for a gala one night, and I walked out of the closet wearing it. Liam looked me up and down, his expression hovering somewhere between pity and amusement. "It is a bit bold, isn't it?" he asked. "It looks like you are trying too hard. You do not want to look desperate." Eden. I went back into the closet and changed into a black dress that blended into the wallpaper. I never wore the blue dress again. Eventually, I donated it to Goodwill, feeling foolish for ever thinking I could pull it off. The control over my appearance was subtle, but the control over our finances was sold to me as a favor. "Why are you stressing over paying the bills every month?" he asked me one Sunday morning while I was surrounded by spreadsheets. "I am better at the big picture stuff. Let me handle the accounts. You work hard enough at Lumagate. You should not have to be the CFO at home, too." It sounded like love. It sounded like he wanted to take a burden off my shoulders. So, I handed over the login credentials. I handed over the power. Within 6 months, I did not know the passwords to our primary savings account. I had a credit card for household expenses, but every time I used it for something personal, a coffee, a book, a haircut, Liam would make a joke about it at dinner. Eden is single-handedly keeping Starbucks in business, he would say. I might have to put her on an allowance. He said it with a smile. Everyone laughed. I stopped buying coffee. The world outside our marriage began to shrink. I had a best friend named Talia Nguyen. We had known each other since college. Talia was sharp, loud, and fiercely loyal. She was the only person who looked at Liam with skepticism, which meant she was the person I needed to be kept away from. It was a Tuesday in November. Talia and I had planned a girls' night out. Just dinner and drinks. Something we used to do every week. I was putting on my coat, checking my reflection in the hallway mirror, feeling a rare spark of excitement. Liam was on the sofa, flipping through channels. He did not look up. "Going out again?" he asked. "It has been a month, Liam," I said, trying to keep my voice light. He sighed. It was a heavy, exhausted sound that seemed to carry the weight of the entire world. "Must be nice," he said. "Having that much free time. I have been grinding all week to pay for this house, but sure. Go have fun. Do not worry about me." I stood there with my hand on the doorknob. The guilt washed over me. Hot and immediate. I felt selfish. I felt like a bad wife. "I can stay," I said. "No, no." He waved a hand dismissively. "Go. I will just heat up the leftovers." I texted Talia from the driveway. "I have a migraine. So sorry. Rain check." I went back inside and made him a fresh dinner. He did not thank me. He just ate it while watching the game. And I sat next to him, relieved that the tension had dissipated, unaware that I had just severed one of my last lifelines to reality. Even my mother, who lived 3 states away, sensed the change. During our Sunday phone calls, I found myself acting as his public relations manager. "He sounds a little short with you, honey," she said one afternoon after Liam had walked through the room and made a snide comment about how long I had been on the phone. "He is just tired, Mom," I said, my voice pitching up a little too high. "He is just sarcastic. That is his sense of humor. You know him." "I suppose," she said. But the silence that followed was heavy with things she wanted to say and knew I was not ready to hear. I developed a mantra during those years. It was a shield I held up against the truth. At least he does not hit me. At least he does not drink until he blacks out. At least he does not cheat. At least he comes home every night. I repeated these phrases like a prayer. I compared my marriage to the horror stories on the news and told myself I had it good. I told myself that being made to feel small was a fair trade for security. I told myself that the knot of anxiety in my chest when his car pulled into the driveway was just stress from work. I remember one night specifically. It was late, maybe 2 in the morning. The house was dark. I was lying in bed next to him. Liam was asleep, breathing deeply and rhythmically, taking up 3/4 of the king-sized mattress. I was clinging to the edge, curled into a tight ball to avoid waking him. I stared at the shadows the streetlights cast on the ceiling. I listened to the silence of the house that I kept clean for him, the house where I walked on eggshells, the house where I had stopped wearing blue and stopped seeing my friends and stopped speaking my mind. This is just marriage, right? I thought. This is what it means to be a partner. You compromise, you soften, you make room. I closed my eyes, trying to force myself to sleep. I did not know it then, lying there in the dark. But that question was not a confirmation. It was a crack. It was the first hairline fracture in the dam I had built to hold back the flood. And deep down, beneath the layers of denial and duty, a tiny, terrified part of me was already starting to drown. It was 3 years into our marriage when Liam discovered the intoxicating allure of real estate speculation. He and his college friend, Derek Price, had convinced themselves that they were not just mid-level corporate managers, but visionaries waiting for the right opportunity. They spent their weekends huddled over laptops, drinking craft beer and talking about leverage, equity, and tax shelters. They decided to form a consulting firm, a shell entity designed to hold assets and minimize liability. They called it Carter Strategic Insight. It sounded professional. It sounded legitimate. To me, It just sounded like another one of Liam's expensive hobbies, like the golf clubs gathering dust in the garage or the espresso machine he never learned to use. One Tuesday evening in November, the kitchen island was covered in paperwork. There were stacks of documents fresh from the printer, still warm to the touch, smelling of toner. Liam was standing over them with a yellow highlighter, marking specific lines with aggressive slashes of neon ink. Derek was leaning against the counter, swirling a glass of bourbon, watching the process with a bored expression. "I need you to sign these," Liam said, not looking up. He slid a heavy stack of papers toward me. Here, and on the last page." I picked up the first sheet. It was dense text, single-spaced, full of words like indemnification and fiduciary. "What is all this?" I asked. "Just standard homestead waiver and director stuff," Liam said, waving his hand dismissively. "It is for the new LLC. We need a third director for the incorporation filing to keep the tax bracket where we want it. You would not understand the technical terms anyway. Babe, it is just legalese to keep the IRS off our backs." I hesitated. My eyes scanned the paragraph he had highlighted. I saw my name, Eden Garcia Carter. I saw the title next to it, Director. "Come on, Eden," Liam said, his voice dropping into that impatient register that always made my stomach tighten. "We are losing daylight here, and Derek has to get these to the notary by 6. I looked at Derek. He offered me a tight, conspiratorial smile. "It is just formalities, Eden. Nothing to worry about." So I picked up the pen. I signed my name on the line next to the yellow mark. I flipped the page. I signed again. I did not read the clauses. I did not ask what a homestead waiver actually meant for my rights to our property. I just wanted the tension in the kitchen to evaporate. I wanted Liam to smile at me again. As I finished the last signature, Liam snatched the papers away and tapped them on the counter to straighten the stack. He looked at Derek and winked. "See?" Liam said, chuckling. "She just signs where I tell her. That is the benefit of marrying someone who trusts you completely. No questions asked." Derek laughed. "Must be nice. Man, my ex-wife would have hired a forensic accountant before she signed a birthday card." I stood there, holding the cap of the pen, forcing a smile onto my face while shame burned hot in my chest. They were talking about me as if I were a useful appliance, something reliable and brainless that functioned exactly as designed. I went back to chopping vegetables for their dinner, telling myself it did not matter. I told myself that marriage was about trust, even when that trust felt a lot like submission. 3 weeks later, the first crack in the facade appeared in the form of a clerical error. I was at my desk at Lumigate Dynamics, staring at a spreadsheet, when an email notification popped up on my screen. It was from a generic sender address, something like admin at Carter Strategic Insight. The subject line read, "Executed incorporation documents. Final PDF." I frowned. Liam must have let his personal email autofill with my work address by mistake. We shared a laptop at home sometimes, and his carelessness with data privacy was a constant source of friction between us. I moved the mouse to delete it, but my finger hovered over the button. "She just signs where I tell her." The memory of his voice in the kitchen stung. I clicked open. The PDF was 40 pages long. It was the document I had signed, but now it was complete. It bore the official stamp of the Secretary of State. I began to scroll, intending only to glance at it, but my training as an operations manager kicked in. I was used to looking for discrepancies in contracts. I was used to spotting things that did not belong. I stopped on page 7, Article 4, Allocation of Ownership and Beneficiaries. My name was listed there, not just as a figurehead director, but as a 50% stakeholder in the consultancy. I scrolled down. There was a clause about asset distribution. In the event of dissolution or liquidation, assets held by the company shall be distributed to the primary beneficiaries as outlined in Schedule B. I scrolled to Schedule B. There was my name again. I sat back in my ergonomic chair, the hum of the open plan office fading into the background. Liam had told me I was signing paperwork to help them with taxes. He had implied my role was administrative, a ghostly presence to satisfy a bureaucratic requirement. But according to these documents, I was not a ghost. I was the co-owner of Carter Strategic Insight. My heart began to hammer, not with fear, but with a sudden, sharp clarity. Why would he do this? Why would he give me half of a company that he and Derek treated as their private clubhouse? I printed the entire document. I did not send it to the office printer where colleagues might see it. I sent it to the secure printer in the HR wing, which required a badge scan to release the job. I walked over, collected the warm pages, and slid them into a plain manila folder. I took a black marker and wrote, "Old Car Insurance 2017" on the tab. It was the most boring, invisible label I could think of. No one looks at expired insurance policies. That night, I waited until Liam was asleep. I took the folder into the guest bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the cold tile floor. I read every word. I used my phone to search for terms I did not understand. Piercing the corporate veil, fiduciary duty, commingling of funds. The more I read, the more I realized I was out of my depth. I understood the structure, but I did not understand the intent. I needed a translator. 2 days later, I took a long lunch break and drove to a small, cluttered office on the edge of downtown. It was the workspace of Monica Ruiz. We had gone to college together, sharing notes in Introduction to Political Science. Monica had been the firebrand, the one who argued with professors. Now, she was a senior paralegal specializing in family law and small business litigation. She was the kind of person who knew where all the bodies were buried because she had helped dig the holes. I sat across from her, the manila folder open between us. Monica read in silence. She pushed her glasses up her nose, her dark eyes darting across the lines of text. She flipped a page, then another. She stopped, reread a paragraph, and looked up at me. Her expression was a complicated mix of astonishment and concern. "Eden," she said slowly, "do you know what this is?" "It is the company Liam started with Derek," I said. "He said I needed to sign to help with the tax bracket." Monica let out a short, sharp sound that was devoid of humor. "Tax bracket, right. That is one way to put it. Eden, this structure is classic asset shielding. He is dumping money into this consultancy to hide it from his primary income tax, and possibly to hide it from you if he ever decides to leave. He is using this entity to buy things, hold investments, and probably run expenses that are not strictly business." "I figured that much," I said. "He calls it optimizing." "But here is the part he messed up," Monica said, tapping her fingernail on page 7. "In his arrogance, or maybe just his laziness, he made you an equal partner. He probably did it because spousal transfers are not taxed the same way, or because he needed a second signature to open certain high-yield accounts without alerting the bank to his personal credit limit. He used you as a mule." I felt a cold flush of humiliation. "I know. No, you do not know," Monica said. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You know this basically makes you the co-owner of his hidden consultancy. It gives you a legal claim on anything that flows through these accounts. Every dollar he hides here, half of it is yours. Every asset he buys under this company name, you have the right to access it, audit it, and liquidate it." I stared at her. The hum of the air conditioner seemed to get very loud. "He told me I wouldn't understand the technical terms. He counted on that," Monica said. "He counted on you being the good little wife who nods and signs and doesn't ask why she is listed as the treasurer and secretary." She looked at the signature page, where Liam's autograph sprawled across the line, big and looping and careless. "Did he force you to sign?" she asked. "Did he explain the liability?" "No," I said. "He just laughed. He told Derek that I sign whatever he tells me to sign. He said I was too soft to care about the details." Monica sat back in her chair and exhaled a long plume of breath. She looked at me with a fierce, protective intensity. "Then he is an idiot," she said. "He just handed you a knife and called it a joke." I looked down at the document. For years, I had felt like a passenger in my own life, strapped into the passenger seat while Liam drove us wherever he wanted, occasionally swerving just to see me flinch, I had thought this paperwork was just another seatbelt he had tightened around me, but Monica was right. This was not a restraint. This was a weapon. "What do I do?" I asked. "For now," Monica said. "Nothing. You do not say a word. You do not ask about the company. You let him think you are exactly who he thinks you are. But we are going to keep a copy of this, and we are going to start watching where the money goes." She stood up and walked to a scanner in the corner of the office. "I am going to scan this to a secure server. I am going to help you set up an encrypted email account that is not linked to your phone or your home computer. We are going to build a library, Eden, and when he makes a mistake, and men like him always make a mistake, we are going to be ready." I watched the light of the scanner pass over the paper. It was a rhythmic, hypnotic motion. With every pass of the light, the document was being immortalized, duplicated, turned from a piece of paper I could lose into a digital ghost that would never disappear. I did not feel like laughing. I did not feel like celebrating. I felt a strange, cold sensation settling at the base of my spine. It was the absence of fear. For the first time in years, I was not afraid of what Liam might say or do. I was looking at his signature, that arrogant scrawl that screamed of his confidence, and I realized that his confidence was his biggest weakness. He thought I was blind because I had closed my eyes. He forgot that eyes could open. I walked out of Monica's office 20 minutes later with a flash drive in my pocket and a new email address memorized in my head. The sun was shining on the pavement, bright and harsh. I checked my watch. It was 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I had to get back to Lumagate. I had to go home and cook dinner. I had to listen to Liam make jokes about my day. But as I unlocked my car, I caught my reflection in the driver's side window. The woman looking back at me was not the same woman who had signed those papers in the kitchen. That woman had been a wife. This woman was a shareholder, and she was about to conduct the most thorough audit of Liam Carter's life that he could never have imagined. The spiral notebook was nothing special. It cost me $1.50 at a drugstore 3 blocks from my office. It had a black cover, flimsy wire binding, and 80 sheets of college-ruled paper. There were no inspirational quotes on the front, no floral patterns, no gold foil lettering spelling out dreams or gratitude. It was ugly, functional, and completely invisible. I hid it under the mattress on my side of the bed. I knew it was safe there because in 7 years of marriage, Liam had never once changed the sheets. He had never lifted a finger to rotate the mattress or vacuum the dust bunnies underneath the frame. His domain was the visible world, the shiny countertops, the polished car, the perfectly manicured lawn. The dark, dusty spaces underneath things belonged to me. That notebook became the first repository of my new reality. I stopped writing about my feelings. I stopped writing. I feel sad today because Liam said I looked tired. Instead, I wrote data. November 14th, I arrived home at 1:15 in the morning. Claimed traffic was bad on the interstate. Google Maps history showed no delays. Smelled of vanilla perfume and gin. November 16th, the credit card statement shows a charge of $240 at the Sapphire Lounge. Liam claimed he was at a client dinner at a steakhouse. November 20th, called me stupid in front of the landscapers because I forgot to unlock the back gate. Quote, "You would lose your head if it was not attached to your neck." Writing it down changed the nature of the pain. When the words were just echoing in my head, they felt like heavy stones dragging me down. But when I transferred them to paper, they became external. They became evidence. They became facts that could be analyzed, categorized, and stored. But the notebook was just an analog backup. The real work happened at Lumagate Dynamics. I created a spreadsheet on my work computer. I named the file Q4 Inventory Draft. It sat in a folder nested 3 levels deep inside my archive drive, surrounded by old budget reports and vendor lists. To anyone glancing at my screen, it looked like a boring grid of logistical data. It was actually a timeline of the disintegration of my marriage. I created tabs for different categories: financial discrepancies, verbal abuse, unexplained absences. I treated Liam not as my husband, but as a project that was failing to meet its KPIs. I logged dates. I logged times. I logged the names of anyone who was present when he humiliated me. At work, my behavior changed too. Lumagate had a robust compliance department, the kind of place where people made jokes about red tape and boring seminars. I used to be one of those people. I used to check my email during the mandatory annual training on ethics and fraud. Now, I sat in the front row. I signed up for voluntary workshops on internal auditing. I sat in a windowless conference room with a highlighter, listening to a woman from HR explain the nuances of conflict of interest. I learned about misappropriation of assets. I learned about the fraud triangle pressure, opportunity, and rationalization. I wrote that down in my notes and underlined it twice. Liam had all three: the pressure to maintain his lifestyle, the opportunity provided by the shell company he thought I was too stupid to understand, and the rationalization that he was the smartest man in the room and deserved it all. I learned about whistleblower protections. I learned how forensic accountants trace funds through shell companies. I absorbed the vocabulary of investigation like a sponge. My colleagues thought I was just being diligent, maybe gunning for a promotion. They did not know I was building a skill set to survive my own home. The emotional turning point came on a Tuesday night in early December. I had gone to bed early with a headache. Liam was still downstairs, probably drinking scotch and texting Derek. I fell into a fitful sleep and plummeted straight into a nightmare. In the dream, I was standing in an empty white room, and Liam was towering over me, his face twisted into a mask of pure disdain. He was screaming, his voice reverberating off the walls. "You are nothing without me. You will have nothing if I leave. You are just a guest in my life." I woke up gasping. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The room was dark. Liam was not in bed yet. The silence of the house felt heavy, suffocating. I sat up, pulling my knees to my chest, pressing my back against the cold headboard. The echo of his dream voice was still ringing in my ears. "You will have nothing." I reached for the glass of water on the nightstand, my hand trembling. I took a sip, the cool liquid grounding me. That is not true anymore. I thought. The realization was sudden and absolute. It washed over me, cooling the sweat on my skin. I am the co-director of Carter Strategic Insight. I am the 50% beneficiary. I have a spreadsheet. I have a lawyer. I have a plan. If I stopped pretending to be the wife he wanted and started being the partner he had unwittingly created, I was not nothing. I was a threat. I lay back down, but I did not go back to sleep. I lay there in the dark, listening to the house settle, and I felt a fundamental shift in my architecture. The fear that had been my constant companion for years began to recede, replaced by a cold, hard curiosity. From that night on, I stopped being a victim. I became a shadow. I started observing my life as if I were watching a documentary. When we sat down for dinner, I was not just eating lasagna. I was conducting surveillance. I watched how he held his fork. I watched how he checked his phone under the table, tilting the screen away from me. I listened to the tone of his voice when he talked about his day, listening to the inconsistencies, the little lies he told just to keep in practice. "Derek and I are closing a big deal with a developer in Austin," he said one night, chewing on a piece of garlic bread. "There are going to be a lot of late nights next week." "That sounds exciting," I said, my voice perfectly neutral. "Is this through the main firm or the consultancy?" He paused. His fork hovered halfway to his mouth. He looked at me, searching for a trap, but my face was a mask of polite interest. "The consultancy," he said. "Why?" "Just curious," I said. "Pass the salt, please." Under the table, I made a mental note. Austin deal. Consultancy. Check bank records for travel expenses next week. I upgraded my digital security. Monica had introduced me to a cloud storage service that looked like a calculator app on my phone. You had to type in a specific equation to open the hidden drive. I set up automatic backups. Every text message Liam sent me, every photo of a receipt I found in his pockets, every screenshot of his location when he forgot to turn off sharing it all went into the cloud. I set up a filter on my email. Any message containing the words bank, transfer, statement, or Carter's Strategic Insight was automatically forwarded to the secret email address Monica had helped me create, and then immediately marked as read and archived in a hidden folder. I was building a mirror of his digital life, a backup copy that he could not delete because he did not know it existed. The test of my new resolve came 3 days later. It was a Thursday. Liam had come home in a foul mood. He had lost a client at his day job, and he was looking for a place to vent his anger. He walked into the kitchen where I was loading the dishwasher. He opened the refrigerator and stared into it for a long moment. "Where is the IPA?" he asked. "Not honey. Do we have beer?" "Just the demand." "I didn't go to the store today," I said, not turning around. "I had a late meeting." He slammed the refrigerator door. The sound was like a gunshot in the small space. "Useless," he spat. The word hung in the air, ugly and sharp. "I work 10 hours a day to pay for this kitchen, and you cannot even keep it stocked with the one thing I ask for. It is pathetic. Eden, you are pathetic." In the past, my eyes would have filled with tears. I would have apologized. I would have offered to drive to the gas station right then and there to buy him his six-pack. I would have absorbed his anger like a sponge, taking the blame to keep the peace. This time, I did not flinch. I stood at the sink, holding a wine glass under the stream of warm water. I felt the soap slick on my fingers. I felt the ceramic of the sink against my hip. Time 7:43 p.m. I recited in my head, location kitchen, subject Liam Carter, incident verbal abuse, trigger lack of alcohol. Quote, "You are pathetic." I turned off the faucet. I dried the glass with a linen towel. Watching the way the light caught the crystal, I felt a strange, detached sensation. My heart rate had not even spiked. His words were just noise, data points to be entered into row 412 of my spreadsheet. "I am sorry you feel that way," I said calmly. I did not look at him. I placed the glass on the drying rack with a precise, gentle click. Liam stood there, breathing hard, waiting for the reaction he was addicted to. He wanted the tears. He wanted the submission. When he did not get it, he looked confused, like a child who had pushed a button on a toy and nothing happened. He grunted, grabbed a bottle of water, and stomped into the living room. I finished cleaning the kitchen. I wiped down the counters. I turned off the lights. Then I walked to the doorway of the living room. Liam was slumped on the sofa, the blue light of the television flickering across his face. He was laughing at something on the screen, his anger already forgotten, discharged onto me so he could relax. He looked comfortable. He looked like a king in his castle. I stood in the shadows, watching him. I looked at the back of his head, the way his hair curled slightly over his collar. I looked at the man I had promised to love, honor, and cherish. "I am not scared of you." I thought, the words clear and cold as a bell in my mind. "I am studying you." And as I turned to go upstairs to my notebook and my hidden files, I realized that for the first time in years, I was the one in control. He just did not know it yet. Monica's office was not the kind of place where you expected to find a high-powered legal strategy. It was a cramped second-floor walk-up in the older part of the city, wedged between a bail bondsman and a psychic reader. The neon sign from the window across the street blinked a rhythmic, buzzing red that washed over her desk every 3 seconds. The air smelled of stale coffee and old paper, that specific scent of dusty archives and long nights. But to me, it felt like a bunker. It felt like the only safe place in the world. I sat across from her, watching as she spread my life out on her scratched mahogany desk. It was a chaotic mosaic of paper. There were the printed emails I had forwarded to the secret account. There were the bank statements I had managed to photograph while Liam was in the shower. There was the printout of the Carter Strategic Insight operating agreement, the edges soft from being handled so many times. And then there was my spreadsheet, the Q4 inventory draft, with its rows and rows of dates, insults, and lies. Monica did not speak for a long time. She read with a highlighter in her mouth, pulling it out occasionally to mark a line in neon yellow. The only sound in the room was the hum of the street outside and the scratch of her pen. Finally, she capped the highlighter and leaned back. The springs of her chair groaned. She looked at me over the rim of her glasses, her expression unreadable. "I have to ask you a question, Eden," she said. Her voice was low, serious. "And I need you to answer it without thinking about what a good wife would say. I need the truth." "Okay," I said. My hands were clasped so tightly in my lap that my knuckles were white. "Are you looking for revenge?" she asked. "Do you want to burn him down just to watch him burn? Or are you looking for a way out alive?" I looked at the papers. I looked at the timeline of abuse, the financial manipulation, the calculated erasure of my identity. A part of me, the part that had been humiliated at dinner parties for 7 years, wanted to see him suffer. I wanted him to feel small. But then I thought about the anxiety that woke me up at 3 in the morning. I thought about the way I checked the lock on the bathroom door twice before I showered. "I do not care about hurting him," I said, and I realized I meant it. "I just want him not to own every inch of my life anymore. I want to be able to breathe without asking for permission. I want to be safe." Monica nodded. "Good. Revenge is messy. Revenge gets you emotional and makes you sloppy. Survival. Survival is strategic. If we do this right, the destruction of his world will just be a side effect of your freedom." She pulled the Carter Strategic Insight contract toward her. "Here is the reality," she began, tapping the document. "Liam built a cage for you, but he forgot to lock the gate. By making you a 50% director and the primary beneficiary, he legally tied his secret assets to you. He thinks this company is his personal piggy bank to hide money from the IRS and from our state's marital asset laws, but legally, you are the bank manager." She pulled out a fresh legal pad and uncapped a pen. "We are going to build a strategy on 3 pillars. First, we validate your authority. Second, we secure your exit funds. Third, we prepare the trap." I watched as she wrote Phase 1, the director at the top of the page. "You need to stop thinking of this as stealing from him," Monica said. "You are a director of this company. You have a fiduciary duty to ensure the company's funds are not being misappropriated. If he is using company money to pay for personal dinners, hotels, or gifts for people who are not clients, that is embezzlement. It is tax fraud. And since you are a director, if you know about it and do nothing, you are liable. So, we are going to document it to protect you." "Okay," I whispered. "Document everything." "Phase 2, she continued, writing financial air supply. "You need money that he cannot touch. If he finds out you are leaving, the first thing he will do is freeze the joint accounts. He will cancel your credit cards. He will try to starve you out." "He checks the accounts every day," I said, panic rising in my throat. "If I move even $50, he asks about it." "We do not move existing money," Monica said. "We divert new money. Does he check your actual pay stub from Lumagate, or just the deposit amount in the bank?" "Just the deposit," I said. "He never looks at the HR portal." "Great," Monica said. "Go to HR tomorrow. Change your direct deposit. Have $200 from every paycheck sent to a new account at a completely different bank. Tell him the slight drop in the deposit is due to an increase in health insurance premiums or tax withholding. He won't question it because he thinks you are bad with numbers. Remember, use his arrogance against him." I nodded, feeling a spark of hope. $200 a paycheck. It was not a fortune, but over a few months, it was a safety net. It was a deposit on an apartment. Phase 3, Monica wrote, the boomerang. This is the part where we prepare for him to make the first move. Men like Liam usually like to control the narrative. If he decides to discard you, he will want to do it on his terms. He will file for divorce, claim you are unstable, and try to leave you with nothing. We need to be ready so that when he swings the bat, it hits him in the face. She looked me in the eye. I want you to start saving every text, every email, every voicemail where he brags about money. You know the ones. When he talks about off-the-books consulting or clients the IRS does not need to know about, he thinks he is impressing you. Actually, he is confessing to a crime. I thought about the nights he came home tipsy, boasting about how much smarter he was than the drones who paid full taxes. I thought about the texts he sent Derek, which I had seen over his shoulder. joking about ghost income. I can do that, I said. And we need a physical backup, Monica said. Cloud storage is great, but digital forensics can be tricky if it destroys your phone. I want you to make a copy of everything on a USB drive, and I want you to hide it somewhere he will never, ever look. That evening, I stopped at an electronics store and bought a generic, gray thumb drive. Then I went to the grocery store. When I got home, I walked into the garage. It was Liam's temple of masculinity, filled with tools he rarely used, and boxes of important things I was not allowed to touch. But on the shelf above the washing machine sat the laundry supplies. Liam never did laundry. He claimed he did not know how to separate the colors, which was just another way of saying he thought it was beneath him. I took down the box of powdered detergent, the backup box we kept for emergencies when the liquid ran out. It was a heavy cardboard box that smelled of artificial mountain air. I opened the flap carefully. I wrapped the USB drive in 3 layers of plastic wrap and then sealed it inside a small Ziploc bag. I pushed it deep into the white powder, shaking the box until the drive was buried at the bottom, completely invisible. I glued the flap back down. I put the box back on the shelf, right between the fabric softener and the bleach. It was a mundane domestic object, just a box of soap. But every time I walked into the garage after that, I looked at it and felt a surge of adrenaline. It was not just detergent anymore. It was a grenade with the pin pulled, waiting for the right moment. The next week, I went back to Monica's office to sign the retainer agreement. She spent an hour explaining the concept of a restraining order. Most people think a restraining order is just a piece of paper, Monica said, leaning forward on her elbows. They think it only matters if he hits you, but in this state, the law is broader. It covers harassment. It covers financial coercion. It covers stalking. She drew a circle on her notepad. If we get a protective order, it draws a line in the sand. It says that this space is yours, your body, your workplace, your home. If he crosses that line, if he steps 1 foot into a place the court says he cannot be, it is not a marital dispute anymore. It is a criminal offense. He does not have to hit you to be arrested. He just has to be where he is not supposed to be. You are not supposed to be here. The phrase echoed in my mind. I imagined a line glowing on the floor of my life, a boundary that Liam could not cross without consequences. For 7 years, he had trampled all over my boundaries because they were invisible. He had walked through walls I tried to build. But a court order, that was a wall made of iron. I want that, I said. I want the line. We will get it, Monica promised. But we have to wait for him to trigger it. We need him to prove he is a danger, and based on what you have told me about his temper and his ego, he will. I drove home that night with a strange new map in my head. For so long, I had been walking through a fog, reacting to Liam's moods, trying to predict the weather of his anger. Now, the fog was lifting. I saw the landscape clearly. If Liam filed for divorce to blindside me, I had the Carter Strategic Insight documents to freeze his assets. If he tried to hide money, I had the evidence of his tax fraud to leverage a settlement. If he tried to intimidate me, I had the timeline of abuse to secure a protective order. I was not playing a game of emotions anymore. I was playing a game of positions. A, B, C, action and reaction. I pulled into the driveway and saw the blue light of the television flickering in the living room window. Liam was home. He was probably sitting on the couch, drinking his scotch, thinking he was the king of the world. He was probably planning his next investment, thinking about how easy it was to move money around when you had a silent partner who signed whatever you put in front of her. I turned off the ignition. I sat in the dark car for a moment, feeling the weight of the secret bank account card in my hidden pocket. I felt the phantom weight of the USB drive buried in the laundry detergent box 10 feet away. I remembered Monica's parting words to me as I left her office. She had stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the blinking red neon light, looking like a weary general. He thinks he is untouchable. Eden, she had said. He built this whole system assuming you would never read the fine print. He built his fortune on the assumption of your silence, but the moment you read those papers, the moment you started writing things down." She smiled. A sharp, terrifying smile. "He does not know it yet, but he is living in a house made of paper, and you are holding the match." I got out of the car, smoothed my skirt, and walked toward the front door. I unlocked it and stepped inside. "Honey, I'm home," I called out, my voice steady, my face composed. Liam grunted from the living room, not bothering to look up. He had no idea that the woman walking down the hall was not his wife anymore. She was the match. The most dangerous thing a man like Liam Carter could do was get comfortable. For years, his power over me had relied on vigilance, on the constant, subtle enforcement of rules that kept me small and silent. But as the winter turned into a wet gray spring, Liam made a fatal error. He stopped watching me. He looked at my silence and saw submission. He looked at my lack of questions and saw a broken spirit. He assumed that the training was complete and that the dog would no longer bite, so he took off the muzzle. He became reckless. It started with small lapses in his digital hygiene. He began leaving his phone face up on the coffee table when he went to the bathroom. He stopped closing his laptop when I walked into the room. He spoke louder on his calls with Derek, his voice carrying through the thin drywall of the home office. Assuming I was too absorbed in my little hobbies to listen, I was not absorbed. I was recording. The first major crack in his security happened on a Tuesday evening. Liam was in the shower, the water running loud enough to drown out the vibration of his phone on the nightstand. I was folding laundry at the foot of the bed. The screen lit up. It was a text message. The name on the screen was Sloan Miller. I knew Sloan. She was a junior marketing director at Lumagate, a woman 5 years younger than me with a laugh that sounded like breaking glass and a penchant for touching men on the arm when she spoke to them. I had seen her at holiday parties. I had seen Liam hold her gaze just a second too long near the punch bowl. I walked over to the phone. I did not tremble. I did not feel the familiar sickness in my stomach. I just felt the cold precision of a forensic auditor. Liam had changed his passcode to his birth year. A lazy move for a man who prided himself on intelligence. I typed it in. The text chain was long. It was explicit. Same room as last time Sloan had written. I ordered the bottle of Cabernet you like. There were photos of a hotel room view that I recognized as the Hyatt downtown. There were emojis of wine glasses and winking faces. There were messages where Liam complained about me, calling me a dead weight and a bore, and messages where Sloan stroked his ego, telling him he deserved better. I did not cry. I did not throw the phone against the wall. I took my own phone out of my pocket and photographed every single scroll of the conversation. I captured the dates, the timestamps, the explicit confirmations of infidelity. Then I locked his phone and placed it back exactly where it had been, angled 3 degrees to the left of the lamp base. I went back to folding his shirts. When he came out of the bathroom, smelling of steam and expensive soap, I asked him if he wanted chicken or fish for dinner. "Fish?" he said, not even looking at me. "And try not to overcook it this time." "Of course," I said. "I will be careful." 2 weeks later, the scope of his betrayal expanded from simple adultery to total annihilation. It was a Saturday afternoon, and we were at a barbecue in Derek Price's backyard. The air smelled of charcoal and burnt sugar. Liam and Derek were standing by the grill, holding beers, their backs to the patio door. I was inside the kitchen, slicing watermelons for the guests. The sliding glass door was open just a crack, enough to let in the breeze, and enough to carry their voices directly to me. I paused, the knife hovering over the red fruit. "You just have to rip the Band-Aid off, man," Derek was saying. "If you kick her out clean, she will fold. Women like that always do. They panic. They do not have the stomach for a fight. You can keep the house, the consultancy, everything. She will be too busy crying to read the paperwork." I stood frozen. My grip tightened on the handle of the knife. Liam laughed. It was a cruel, dismissive sound. "She will cry. Sure, she always does." It is pathetic, really, but I'm thinking of timing it for maximum impact. I am thinking of serving her on my 40th birthday. Brutal. Derek chuckled. I love it. Big night? Big show? Liam said, taking a swig of his beer. I invite everyone, family, friends, the whole office. I give a speech about moving into a new decade with a clean slate. Then I hand her the papers in front of everyone. Frame it as me finally choosing my own happiness after years of supporting her mental struggles. She will be so humiliated she will sign anything just to get out of the room. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I looked down at the watermelon, the juice pooling on the cutting board like blood. He was not just planning to leave me. He was planning to destroy me. He wanted to turn the end of our marriage into a piece of performance art where he played the hero and I played the unstable burden. I finished slicing the fruit. I arranged it on a platter. I walked out onto the patio and set it down on the table next to them. Here you go, I said, smiling. Fresh watermelon. Liam looked at me, searching my face for any sign that I had heard. I gave him nothing but the vacuous, pleasant expression of the wife he thought he owned. Thanks, babe, he said, dismissing me with a turn of his shoulder. But after that day, I saw the signs of his big show everywhere. He began the smear campaign in earnest. It started with the neighbors. I would see him chatting with Mrs. Gable next door, shaking his head with a look of deep concern. When I waved, she would look at me with a mixture of pity and wariness. Later, she asked me if I was feeling quite myself lately and suggested a vitamin supplement for mood regulation. He started planting seeds with our mutual friends. Eden is going through a rough patch, I heard him say on the phone to his mother. She is just overly emotional right now. I am trying to get her help, but you know how stubborn she can be. Then he took it to Lumagate. I was walking past the break room when I heard two HR associates whispering. They went silent when they saw me, but the silence was loud. Later, my manager asked me if everything was okay at home, mentioning that Liam had casually dropped a comment at a mixer about me being distracted and unfocused due to personal issues. He was painting me as unstable. He was building a narrative where my inevitable reaction to his betrayal would be dismissed as just another symptom of my craziness. But Liam had a blind spot. He was so focused on managing my reputation that he forgot to manage his paper trail. Through my access to the Carter Strategic Insight accounts access. He still did not know I knew about. I saw the money moving. He was siphoning funds from his personal savings and his side projects into the consultancy's main operating account. He was moving $30,000 here, $15,000 there. He thought he was hiding the money from the divorce settlement. He thought that by putting it into the LLC, he was shielding it from Eden the wife. He forgot that Eden the director had a legal right to audit those funds. I sat in Monica's office, watching her scroll through the transaction logs I had downloaded. He is dumping cash, Monica said, her eyes gleaming. He is trying to lower his personal net worth before he files. But because you are a 50% owner of the destination account, he is literally handing you half of everything he tries to hide. It is beautiful. He thinks I am going to sign whatever he gives me, I said. He thinks I will be too embarrassed to fight. Let him think that, Monica said. We are going to let him serve you. We are going to let him throw his big party, and then we are going to introduce him to the concept of fraudulent conveyance. The final piece of evidence fell into my lap 3 nights later. Liam was in his home office, the door slightly ajar. I was in the kitchen, supposedly making tea. I heard his voice, loud and agitated. He must have put the phone on speaker, or perhaps his arrogance had simply raised his volume. I crept down the hallway, my phone already recording. No, Derek, listen, Liam was saying. We do not just say she is crazy, we say she is financially irresponsible. I am going to print out the statements from the joint account. I will highlight all the withdrawals and say she has a shopping addiction. We tell the lawyer she has been draining our savings to fund some manic episodes. Can you prove that? Derek's voice crackled over the speaker. I can prove whatever I want, Liam scoffed. I control the accounts. I can label the withdrawals as whatever I want. Who is the judge going to believe, the successful director or the hysterical wife who buys too many shoes? What about the consultancy money? Derek asked. Is that safe? Totally locked down, Liam said. She does not even know the account number exists. I told you. She signed the papers without reading them. She is clueless. I am going to walk away with the house, the business, and 90% of the cash, and she is going to be lucky if I let her keep her car. I stood in the dark hallway, watching the little waveform on my phone screen dance as it captured every word. She is clueless. She signed without reading. I can prove whatever I want. I stopped the recording. I saved it to the cloud, then to the secret folder, then to the USB drive hidden in the laundry detergent. I walked back to the kitchen. I waited for the kettle to whistle. When I poured the water, my hand was as steady as a rock. Liam walked into the kitchen a few minutes later. He looked energized, the way he always did after plotting with Derek. He saw me standing by the window, looking out at the dark garden. "Hey," he said, grabbing an apple from the bowl. "I was thinking about my birthday. It is coming up in a few weeks. 40 is a big one." "It is," I said, turning to face him. He took a bite of the apple, chewing loudly. He looked me up and down, a smirk playing on his lips. It was the look of a predator toying with a mouse before the final snap of the jaws. "You will be fine without me, right?" he asked suddenly. It was a test. He wanted to see me crumble. He wanted me to reassure him that he was the sun and I was just a planet orbiting him. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had stolen 7 years of my confidence. I looked at the man who planned to humiliate me in front of everyone we knew. I saw the arrogance in his eyes, the absolute certainty that he had already won. I smiled. It was a small, soft smile. The kind of smile you give a child who does not understand the danger they are in. "You would be surprised," I said. Liam laughed, taking another bite of his apple, thinking I was making a joke. He walked out of the room, leaving me alone in the quiet hum of the refrigerator. "Yes," I whispered to the empty room. "You are going to be very surprised." The shift from victim to strategist did not happen overnight, but once the gears were engaged, they moved with the terrifying precision of a guillotine blade. My meetings with Monica Ruiz ceased to be therapy sessions and became war councils. We were no longer discussing how to survive Liam Carter. We were discussing how to dismantle him, piece by piece, using the very tools he had built to control me. Our strategy relied on a 3-pronged attack: financial strangulation, professional ruin, and legal immunity. The first step was the trap within Carter's strategic insight. Liam believed the company was his private vault, impenetrable and invisible. He had forgotten that a vault with 2 keys is only safe if you trust the person holding the second one. "We do not just ask for a divorce settlement," Monica said, sliding a draft letter across her desk. "We exercise your corporate rights. As a 50% director, you are entitled to an independent audit of all financial activities if you suspect malfeasance." "If I send this now, he will know," I said. "We do not send it to him," Monica corrected, her eyes sharp. "We prepare it, we have it notarized, and we hold it. The moment he tries to hide assets during the divorce, we drop this. It stops being a marital dispute and starts being a corporate crime. He will be fighting you in family court and the IRS in federal court at the same time." I signed the request for the audit. My hand did not shake. Next came the financial exit route. I needed money that Liam could not see, touch, or freeze. I went to a bank on the other side of the city, a branch where no one knew us, and opened a checking account solely in my name. The trick was funding it without triggering Liam's surveillance. He watched our joint checking account like a hawk, questioning every grocery bill that exceeded $200, but he was lazy about the details of my employment. I went home that Tuesday and mentioned, casually, over a dinner of roast chicken, that Lumigate was switching payroll vendors. "It is a mess," I sighed, playing the part of the frustrated employee. "They are changing the withholding schedule and the deposit dates. My net deposit might look a little different for a few months while they calibrate the tax brackets." Liam barely looked up from his phone. "Just make sure it covers the mortgage," he mumbled. "I do not want to have to transfer money from my savings to cover your share." "I will make it work," I said. The next day, I instructed HR to split my direct deposit. $300 from every paycheck went quietly into my new, secret account. It was not a fortune, but it was freedom. It was a deposit on a rental truck. It was a retainer for a locksmith. Then, I turned my attention to Lumagate. Liam's confidence at work was built on the assumption that his private life and his professional life were separate worlds. He did not realize that I was the bridge between them. I knew about the dinners at the Sapphire Lounge. I knew about the client meetings at the Hyatt that were actually trysts with Sloan Miller. And thanks to my access to the Carter Strategic Insight accounts, I knew he was paying for these affairs with funds he had siphoned from his consulting clients, labeling them as business development expenses. I did not send the evidence from my work email. I did not use my home Wi-Fi. I drove to a coffee shop 3 towns over, wearing a baseball cap, and used a burner laptop to access the Lumagate Anonymous Whistleblower portal. I uploaded the receipts. I uploaded a side-by-side comparison of his client dinner dates and the hotel room charges. I wrote a brief, clinical summary. Senior Manager Liam Carter is utilizing company time and misappropriated consulting funds to conduct a personal relationship with junior staff member Sloan Miller, creating a conflict of interest and potential embezzlement liability. I hit send, but I did not stop there. I knew that whistleblower reports could take weeks to process. I needed an ally on the inside. I reached out to Arthur Howell. Mr. Howell was a ghost in the compliance department, a man who wore gray suits and seemed to blend into the beige walls of the office. Most people ignored him. I had spent the last 3 months bringing him coffee and asking genuine questions about internal audit protocols. I caught him in the parking garage one evening. "Mr. Howell," I said, keeping my voice low. He stopped, looking at me with mild surprise. "Mrs. Carter, you are working late." "I found something," I said. "In the Q4 archives, it looks like a discrepancy in the vendor list regarding an external consultancy, Carter Strategic Insight." I saw his eyes narrow behind his wire-rimmed glasses. He knew the name. He knew it was Liam's shell company. "That is a conflict," he said softly. "I know," I said. I did not want to flag it officially without being sure, but if someone were to look into the cross-referencing of those invoices, I let the sentence hang in the air. Mr. Howell looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw a flicker of understanding. He did not ask why a wife was turning in her husband. In his line of work, facts were the only things that mattered. "I will look into it," he said. "Hypothetically, of course." "Of course," I said. While the trap at work was being set, I had to secure my defense on the home front. Liam's plan to paint me as unstable was dangerous. If he could convince a judge I was mentally unfit, he could gain power of attorney, or at least damage my credibility in court. I needed to get ahead of the narrative. I made an appointment with Dr. Aris, our family practitioner for the last 5 years. I sat on the crinkly paper of the exam table, took a deep breath, and told the truth. But I told it strategically. "I am experiencing severe anxiety," I told him. "My husband has been increasingly verbal, aggressive, and controlling. I am having trouble sleeping because I'm afraid of his temper." I did not act hysterical. I acted like a calm, rational woman under duress. Dr. Aris listened, typed notes into his laptop, and prescribed a low-dose beta blocker. "I am sorry you are going through this, Eden," he said. "Thank you," I said. "I just wanted to make sure it was documented, in case things get worse. By doing this, I created an official medical record. If Liam tried to claim I was crazy later, my lawyer could pull these records. They would not show a woman losing her mind. They would show a woman seeking help for spousal abuse. It turned his weapon back on him. Liam, unaware that the ground was crumbling beneath him, began his offensive. He started dropping hints to HR, suggesting that I was struggling to focus and might need a leave of absence. I was ready. Monica and I had drafted a dead man's switch email. It was a comprehensive response attached to a timeline of his harassment, proof of his affair with Sloan, and the conflict of interest documents. If HR ever called me into a meeting based on his rumors, I would not cry. I would slide a folder across the desk and say, "I think you should see this before we continue." The final piece of the puzzle was the divorce petition itself. We sat in Monica's office on a rainy Thursday evening. The draft was 20 pages long. It was a masterpiece of legal retribution. "We are asking for the house," Monica said, tapping the clause. "Since you can prove with bank statements that your salary paid the mortgage while his salary went into his investments, we have a strong claim for equity." "And the debt?" I asked. "We are assigning all debts incurred by Carter's strategic insight to him alone," Monica said. "Since he acted outside of his fiduciary duty by using company funds for illicit affairs, you are not liable for the losses, but you are still claiming 50% of the remaining assets." She handed me a pen. "This is the scorched earth version. Eden, when he reads this, he is going to explode." "I know," I said. "Are you ready?" I looked at the paper. Petitioner Eden Garcia. Respondent Liam Carter. I thought about the way he had looked at me at the barbecue, laughing with Derek about serving me papers on his birthday. He wanted a show. He wanted to blindside me. He wanted to make me the punchline of his big night. I uncapped the pen. The ink was black and permanent. I signed my name with a steady hand, the loop of the G in Garcia looking like a shield. "Do not file it yet," I told Monica. "You want to wait?" she asked, surprised. "He wants to serve me on his birthday," I said, a cold calm settling over me. "He has this whole script in his head. If I file now, he goes on the defensive, he hides money, he destroys evidence. But if I wait, if I let him think he is winning until the very last second, he will walk right into the line of fire," Monica finished, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Exactly," I said. "Keep it in the safe. I will tell you when." I went home that night and walked into the kitchen. Liam was looking at a calendar on the wall, circling the date of his 40th birthday, July 15th, with a thick red marker. "Big day coming up," he said, grinning at me. "Have you got me a gift yet?" "I am working on it," I said. "It is going to be something you never forget." Later, when he was asleep, snoring with the arrogance of a man who believes he is untouchable, I went downstairs. I took a black pen from the drawer. I walked over to the calendar. Right next to his red circle, on the date of the party, I made a small, precise black dot. It was not a heart. It was not a smiley face. It looked like a bullet hole. "That is the night," I whispered to the darkness. "That is the night you think you will break me." I touched the paper. It felt cool under my fingertip. "But that is the night I break you." The Altitude Lounge was the kind of place that smelled like money and desperation in equal measure. It was perched on the 45th floor of the city's tallest hotel, a glass box floating above the skyline, filled with velvet banquettes and cocktails that cost $25 apiece. It was exactly the venue Liam would choose for his 40th birthday. It was loud, it was expensive, and it forced everyone to look at him. I walked 10 minutes late. I was wearing a blue silk dress. It was the same dress Liam had made me take off 5 years ago. The one he said made me look like I was trying too hard. I had dug it out of the donation bag in the attic, had it dry cleaned, and tailored to fit the woman I was now sharper, thinner, and harder. When I stepped off the elevator, I felt the fabric cool against my skin. An armor of sapphire silk. Liam was holding court near the bar. He was surrounded by a cluster of admirers, including his parents, a few senior partners from Lumagate, and, of course, Derek. Sloan Miller was there too, standing just outside the inner circle, holding a martini glass with a look of practiced boredom that did not quite hide the proprietary way she watched him. When Liam saw me, his smile faltered for a fraction of a second. He recognized the dress. I saw a flicker of annoyance cross his face, but he smoothed it over instantly. He was the star of the show tonight, and the show must go on. "There she is," he boomed, extending an arm. "The lady of the hour." He pulled me into a side hug that felt more like a headlock. His fingers dug into my waist, asserting possession. To the room, it looked like affection. To me, it felt like a warning. Happy birthday, Liam, I said. My voice was smooth, untroubled. I honestly did not think you would make it, he said, loud enough for the group to hear. I know crowds have been difficult for you lately. He cast a look of performative concern at his mother, who pursed her lips and nodded sympathetically. The narrative was already being spun. Poor Liam, the saintly husband dealing with his fragile, recluse wife. I walked through the party like a ghost who had decided to haunt the living while the body was still warm. I smiled at his colleagues. I accepted a glass of champagne from a waiter. I felt like I was walking through a minefield, but for the first time, I was the one holding the detonator. I made eye contact with Sloane. She was wearing a red dress that was cut low enough to be a statement. She raised her glass to me, a gesture that was half mockery, half challenge. She thought she was the secret. She thought she was the prize Liam was trading up for. I nodded back at her, fighting the urge to laugh. She had no idea she was auditioning for a role on a sinking ship. Halfway through the night, I found myself standing near a potted palm, watching Liam and Derek whisper by the DJ booth. They looked like two high school boys plotting a prank. Derek clapped Liam on the shoulder and laughed. Glancing in my direction, I saw his lips move. I read the words as clearly as if they were subtitles on a screen. She is going to lose it. I took a sip of my champagne. The bubbles burst on my tongue. Not tonight, boys. I thought, tonight, nobody loses it but you. At 9 o'clock, the music lowered, the lights dimmed. Liam stepped into the center of the room, a microphone in his hand. He loved a microphone. He tapped it twice, the feedback screeching slightly, silencing the crowd. Thank you all for coming, he began, flashing that charismatic, $1,000,000 smile. 40 years. It is a milestone. It makes a man reflect on his life, on what he has built, on what he wants for the future. He paused for effect. The room was rapt. I have been lucky in my career, he continued. I have great friends, great partners. He raised his glass to Derek. But life is not just about the wins. It is about knowing when to let go of the things that are holding you back. The air in the room shifted. It grew colder. People glanced at each other. Sensing the turn, Liam turned his body toward me. He put on a face of deep, sorrowful resignation. Eden, he said, his voice dropping to a register of tender pity. We have had some good years. But I think everyone in this room knows that the last few have been hard. I have tried to be the rock. I have tried to support you through your struggles. My stomach tightened, but I kept my face frozen in a polite mask. He was doing it. He was actually doing it. I want you to be happy, he said. And I want to be happy. And I think we both know that is not happening together anymore. He reached into the inner pocket of his tailored suit jacket. He pulled out a thick white envelope. The room went dead silent. You could hear the ice melting in the shakers at the bar. Consider this my birthday wish for both of us, he said, walking over and holding the envelope out to me. A clean slate. It was a piece of theater so cruel, so publicly humiliating, that I saw his mother gasp and cover her mouth. He was serving me divorce papers at his own birthday party. He wanted me to break down. He wanted me to scream, to cry, to cause a scene that would prove to every witness in the room that I was the unstable, crazy wife he had been describing. I reached out and took the envelope. My hand was steady. I opened the flap. I pulled out the documents. I did not have to read them to know what they said, but I scanned the first page anyway. Petitioner Liam Carter. Reason irreconcilable differences. His spouses have a history of emotional instability. Petitioner requests full possession of marital residence and primary business assets. He watched me, waiting for the tears. He had his sad face ready, the comforting hand prepared to pat my shoulder while I dissolved into a puddle on the floor. Instead, I smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a card player who just drew the ace of spades. I reached into my clutch. I did not pull out a tissue. I pulled out a sleek black fountain pen. I walked over to the high-top table next to us. I laid the document down, smoothing it flat against the glass surface. The sound of the paper rustling was the only noise in the room. I uncapped the pen. I signed my name at the bottom of the decree. The ink flowed dark and permanent. I capped the pen and straightened up. I looked Liam dead in the eye. "Thank you," I said, my voice clear and carrying to the back of the room. "I was wondering when you would finally put it in writing." Liam blinked. The script had gone off the rails. He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. "Since we are exchanging gifts," I said, reaching into my bag again, "I have something for you, too." I pulled out a thin leather folder. It was wrapped in silver foil, tied with a neat blue ribbon that matched my dress. I placed it in his hands. He looked at it, confused. He looked at Derek, who was frowning. Then, slowly, Liam tore off the ribbon. He opened the folder. The first thing he saw was the operating agreement for Carter Strategic Insight. I had taken a yellow highlighter, the same color he had used that night in the kitchen 3 years ago, and highlighted a single paragraph. Article 4, Allocation of Ownership. 50% beneficiary Eden Garcia. His face went slack. His eyes darted up to mine, panic flaring behind them. "Keep reading," I whispered. He flipped the page. The next document was a spreadsheet. It was a summary of every dollar he had siphoned from the consultancy to pay for his affair. Hotel charges, dinners, gifts. It was all cross-referenced with dates and times. He flipped the page again. The final document was a printout of an email. It was on the Lumagate letterhead. It was addressed to him, but it had not been sent to his inbox yet. I had arranged for the digital delivery to coincide with this exact moment. Subject notice of suspension, pending internal investigation. Body Mr. Carter, due to credible evidence of embezzlement, tax fraud, and conflict of interest regarding an external entity known as Carter Strategic Insight. Your access to Lumagate systems has been revoked effective immediately. Liam's hands began to shake. The papers rattled loud enough for the people standing close to hear. He looked up at me, and the arrogant mask crumbled completely. He looked like a man who had stepped off a curb and realized too late that a bus was coming. "What did you do?" he mouthed. No sound came out. At that exact second, a chime rang out. It was his phone, sitting on the table where he had left it to make his speech. Then another chime, then a buzzing vibration that rattled against the glass. Sloane's phone buzzed too. She looked at her screen, and her face went pale. She looked at Liam, then at me, and she took a step back, physically distancing herself from the blast radius. Liam scrambled for his phone. He stared at the screen. The notification from Lumagate was there. The notification from his bank about a frozen asset inquiry was there. The room was still watching. They did not know what was in the folder, but they saw the color drain from his face. They saw the way his hands trembled. They saw the way I stood there, calm and blue and terrifying. I picked up my glass of champagne. I took a slow sip, letting the silence stretch until it was almost unbearable. I leaned in close, so only he could hear me over the sudden rushing of blood in his ears. "Happy birthday," I said. I turned around and walked toward the elevator. I did not look back. I did not need to see the wreckage. I could hear it in the sudden, hushed whispers breaking out behind me like a wildfire. I walked out of the altitude lounge, and for the first time in 7 years, the air did not feel thin. It felt like oxygen. The days following the party did not feel like a victory lap. They felt like the quiet, methodical cleanup after a controlled demolition. I did not feel joy as I watched Liam's life disintegrate. I felt a detached, clinical satisfaction, the way a surgeon feels when a tumor is successfully excised. It was messy, yes, but necessary for the patient to survive. The fallout at Lumagate was swift and brutal. The morning after the birthday party, Liam was met at the elevator by security and escorted to a small conference room where he was informed of his suspension pending an internal investigation. The audit I had triggered was no longer a hypothetical exercise. It was a forensic dissection of his career. The rumor mill, fueled by the witnesses at the party, spun out of control. It wasn't just the embezzlement allegations that destroyed him. It was the humiliation. The story of the birthday divorce spread through the industry like wildfire. Colleagues who had once admired his swagger now looked at him as a liability. Sloan Miller was quietly transferred to a different branch in another state, a move that everyone understood was a soft firing. Liam lost his mistress, his reputation, and his access to the company servers in a single 48-hour window. Deprived of his professional armor, Liam began to spiral. He oscillated wildly between pathetic begging and terrifying aggression. 1 hour, he would leave a voicemail sounding like a weeping child, asking how I could throw away 7 years of marriage over a misunderstanding. The next hour, he would send a text message that made the hair on my arms stand up. "You think you are smart?" he wrote at 2 a.m. "You are going to regret humiliating me. I will drag you down so deep you will never breathe fresh air again." I did not reply. I screenshotted the text. I saved the voicemail. I forwarded everything to Monica. 2 days later, Monica filed the official countersuit. It was a heavy, comprehensive document that hit the court with the force of a sledgehammer. We included everything: the Carter Strategic Insight Operating Agreement proving my 50% ownership, the timeline of verbal abuse, the medical records from Dr. Aris documented my anxiety, and the financial records showing exactly how much marital money he had burned on hotels and dinners with Sloan. The judge granted a temporary restraining order immediately. Liam was barred from contacting me, barred from entering my workplace, and barred from coming within 500 feet of my person. With the legal shield in place, I made my physical exit. I moved into Ridgeview Heights on a rainy Tuesday. It was a high-rise complex on the other side of the city, a place of glass and steel that felt sterile in the most comforting way possible. It was a fortress. The first time I closed the door to my new apartment, I stood in the foyer for a long time. I was waiting for the familiar knot of tension in my stomach, the one that usually tightened whenever I heard a car engine or a heavy footstep. It did not come. The silence in the apartment was absolute. It was not the tense silence of a house where someone is angry. It was the peaceful silence of a space that belonged entirely to me. I walked room to room, touching the walls. I unpacked my clothes, including the blue silk dress, and hung them in a closet that smelled only of cedar and freedom. There were no golf clubs in the corner. There was no scotch on the counter. There was only me. I took security seriously. Monica had advised me to treat the restraining order as a piece of paper, not a magic force field. "Paper tells the police who to arrest after the crime," she had said. "Locks keep the crime from happening." I hired a private security contractor recommended by the building management. We installed a smart lock on the front door that logged every entry attempt. We placed cameras in the hallway, the living room, and facing the balcony. I set up a panic protocol on the central hub. If the door was breached by force or by an unauthorized key while the system was armed, it would not just sound a siren. It would send a silent, immediate distress signal to the local police precinct and the building's armed security desk. I hoped I would never have to use it, but I slept better knowing it was there. Liam, meanwhile, was struggling to accept the new reality. He could not touch me physically, so he tried to touch me digitally. He sent emails from burner accounts, long, rambling manifestos that veered from blaming me to blaming Derek to blaming the world. "You do not get to just walk away from me." One email read, "I made you. You were nothing before I found you, and you will be nothing without me. You owe me." I forwarded it to the detective handling my case. Every email he sent was another nail in the coffin of his defense. He was proving, in his own words, that he did not respect boundaries. A week after I moved, I was sitting in a coffee shop near my new office, reviewing a budget report, when a shadow fell across my table. I looked up. It was Derek Price. He looked tired. The swagger was gone, replaced by the nervous energy of a man who knows he backed the wrong horse. He held up his hands in a gesture of surrender before I could reach for my phone. "I just want to talk." "Eden," he said. "Please, 5 minutes." I sat back, crossing my arms. "You have 2 minutes, Derek, and if I see Liam's car anywhere in the parking lot, I am calling the police." "He is not here," Derek said, sliding into the chair opposite me. "Look, he is a mess. He knows he's screwed up, but you have to understand, he is just browning out. He is confused. You guys had something real. We had a fraud, I said coldly. And you helped him build it. We were just hustling, Derek pleaded. Everyone has a side hustle. Everyone moves money around to save on taxes. You do not have to destroy him over it. If you drop the audit request, I can get him to agree to a fair settlement. He just wants this to be over. I looked at Derek. I thought about the barbecue. I thought about the two of them standing by the grill, laughing about how I would fold, about how I would cry and sign whatever they put in front of me. A fair settlement, I repeated. Yeah, Derek said, seeing an opening. 50-50 on the house. He keeps the business. You keep your car. Clean break. I laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. I heard what you bet on. Derek, I said. Derek froze. What? At the barbecue, I said, watching the color drain from his face. I heard you tell him that if he kicked me out clean, I would fold. You bet him that I would be too weak to fight. You told him he could keep everything. Derek opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked like he had been slapped. I am not folding, I said, leaning forward. And tell Liam that if he sends you to negotiate for him again, I will add your name to the conspiracy lawsuit. I have your signature on the Carter Strategic Insight documents, too. Remember? Derek stood up so fast, his chair scraped loudly against the floor. He did not say another word. He turned and walked out of the coffee shop, looking over his shoulder as if he expected me to chase him. I did not chase him. I went back to my coffee. The hearing for the permanent restraining order took place 10 days later. Liam arrived in a suit that looked slightly too large for him now. He had lost weight. His eyes were rimmed with red. He tried to play the part of the misunderstood husband. He stood before the judge and spoke about how much he loved me, about how he was just passionate, and how I was misinterpreting his concern for harassment. He used the word hysterical twice. Then Monica stood up. She did not use adjectives. She used evidence. She played the recording of him and Derek plotting to leave me destitute. She showed the emails threatening to destroy me. She submitted the log of the times he had driven past my old office after the temporary order was in place. The judge was not charmed. Mr. Carter, the judge said, peering over his glasses, your behavior is not passionate. It is predatory. The order is extended for 3 years. You are to have 0 contact with Mrs. Garcia, no emails, no third-party messages, and you are to stay away from her residence at Ridgeview Heights. If you violate this, you will go to jail. Do you understand? Liam nodded, his jaw tight. He looked at me across the aisle. There was no love in his eyes. There was only a cold, terrifying promise. I went home that afternoon and stood on my balcony, looking out at the city lights. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the cool evening air. It should have felt like the end. I had the apartment. I had the order. I had the money secure, but the back of my neck was prickling. I went inside and walked to the security hub on the wall. I entered the master code. I navigated to the advanced settings. Silent alarm protocol active. Trigger condition unauthorized ye. Entry. Forced entry. Response. Immediate police dispatch. I set the system to night mode. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. It was a text message from a number I did not recognize. I knew who it was before I opened it. You cannot erase me from your life that easily. It was not a scream. It was a whisper. It was the statement of a man who felt entitled to my existence. A man who believed that a piece of paper from a judge was just another suggestion he could ignore. I looked at the message. A month ago, it would have made me shake. It would have made me check the locks 3 times. Now, I just felt a grim resolve. I knew he was coming. He had to come. His ego would not let him fade away quietly. He needed to have the last word. He needed to stand in my space one last time to prove he was real. I deleted the message. I walked over to the kitchen island, the spot where the under-cabinet lights cast a perfect, dim glow on the entryway. I stood there for a moment, rehearsing the angle, checking the sightline of the camera in the corner. "Watch me," I whispered to the empty room. I turned off the main lights. leaving the apartment in shadow. I was ready. The trap was set. All he had to do was walk into it. It was 20 minutes past 11 at night. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of my new apartment, a heavy wet snow was falling, blurring the city lights below into streaks of gold and gray. I was sitting at my kitchen island, the cool blue light of my laptop screen reflecting on the polished quartz countertop. It was quiet. For the first time in my adult life, the silence did not feel like a threat. It felt like a blank canvas. Every sound in the apartment, the low hum of the heater, the soft click of my keyboard, the wind pressing against the glass, belonged to me. I did not have to decipher the cadence of footsteps in the hallway. I did not have to gauge the velocity of a closing door to determine the mood of the man walking through it. I was alone, and for the first time, being alone felt like a luxury. My phone, sitting face up on the counter, pinged with a single notification. It cut through the quiet like a bell. I glanced at the screen. It was an email from Monica. The subject line was short, "Update on Lumagate." I opened it. The text was concise, devoid of the emotional fluff that usually accompanies bad news. Just got confirmation. Lumagate has officially terminated his contract for cause. The IRS has opened a preliminary audit into Carter's strategic insight based on the whistleblower report. It is done. I looked at the words. I read them twice. I did not smile. I did not pop a bottle of champagne or dance around the living room. I just felt a heavy weight lift off my chest, vanishing into the ether. I typed a reply. Received. Thank you. It was not a victory lap. It was just paperwork. It was the final signature on a demolition order that had been years in the making. Then, the atmosphere changed. The smart home security panel mounted by the refrigerator lit up. A soft chime, distinct from a text alert, rippled through the air. Alert entry attempt. Front door. My heart kicked against my ribs. A sudden, violent rhythm. I looked at the small video feed on the screen. A figure was standing in the hallway outside my door. He was wearing a dark wool coat with the collar turned up against the cold. But I knew the posture. I knew the way he shifted his weight from foot to foot, impatient and agitated. It was Liam. He was jamming a keycard into the slot. The light on the lock flashed red. Denied. He tried again, shoving it in with more force. Red. He looked over his shoulder, his eyes darting nervously toward the elevator bank. He looked desperate. He looked like a trapped animal looking for a hole in the fence. The system flashed a warning in bright orange letters. Emergency protocol ready. Tap to call 911. I hovered my finger over the button. My pulse was thrumming in my ears. But I did not press it yet. If I called now, while he was just standing in the hallway, the police would cite him for trespassing or harassment. He would get a slap on the wrist. He would claim he was just confused, that he thought I wanted to see him. I needed him to cross the threshold. I needed him to break the seal. I needed him to prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the law meant nothing to him compared to his own ego. Liam fumbled in his pocket. He pulled out a brass key. It was not a standard apartment key. It was longer, with a square head, a master key. He must have stolen it from the front desk when the night guard was on a break, or perhaps he had bribed a maintenance worker with the last of his cash. He slid the key into the manual override cylinder. The lock clicked. The sound was heavy and final, echoing like a gunshot in the silent apartment. The door handle is depressed. The heavy door swung inward. Liam stepped inside. He closed the door behind him softly, trying to be a ghost. He stood in the entryway, dripping melting snow onto the hardwood floor. "Eden," he whispered. His voice was familiar, but it sounded wrong in this space. This air did not belong to him. These walls did not know him. He took a step forward, scanning the dark living room, assuming I was asleep, or hiding, or perhaps not even home. He assumed he had the element of surprise. He was wrong. I stepped out of the shadows of the hallway leading to the kitchen. I tapped the screen on the wall, bringing the overhead lights up to 50% brightness, enough to see, enough for the high-definition camera in the corner to capture every pixel of his face. "You are not supposed to be here," I said. My voice was flat. It was calm. It was the voice of a woman who was done negotiating with terrorists. Liam spun around. The look on his face was a masterpiece of disintegration. First, there was the shock of seeing me standing there, fully dressed, waiting. Then, his eyes flicked to the phone in my hand, the red record button pulsing on the screen. Finally, he looked up and saw the blinking red lens of the security camera mounted in the ceiling corner. He froze. He looked down at the brass key still clutched in his hand, the stolen key, and the realization hit him like a physical blow. He had just walked into a cage. He had just handed me the weapon I needed to finish him. "I just wanted to talk," he stammered, taking a half step back toward the door. His arrogance was gone, replaced by a frantic, boyish fear. "You had years to talk," I said, not moving an inch. "Tonight, you chose to trespass instead." I touched the screen of my phone. The call went through instantly. The speakerphone was on loud. 911, what is your emergency? The operator's voice filled the room, calm and authoritative. "This is Eden Garcia," I said. My eyes locked on Liam's face. "My ex-husband, under a current restraining order, just broke into my apartment at Ridgeview Heights. He is in the unit now. He used a stolen key." "Eden, stop." Liam lunged forward a step, then stopped when I raised the phone higher. "Hang up. Are you crazy? I will leave. I am leaving right now." "Officers are dispatched," the operator said. "Are you in a safe location, ma'am?" "I am safe," I said. "I am recording him." Liam's panic shifted into anger. His face flushed a deep, ugly red. "You set me up," he shouted, his voice cracking. "I will tell them everything. I will tell the court. You lured me here. You cannot do this to me." I shrugged. It was a small, indifferent movement. "They already know," I said. "I made sure they heard it from me first. The cameras do not lie, Liam, and neither do I. Not anymore." He looked around the apartment, his eyes wild. He looked at the balcony door, then the hallway. Realizing there was nowhere to go, he was trapped in the high-rise box he had tried to force me into. But this time, the lock was on the outside. Bam! 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 The pounding on the door was thunderous. "Police, open up." The sound was identical to the sound in my memory, the sound I had imagined 1,000 times, but this time, I was not the one afraid of it. Liam flinched. He looked at the door, then back at me. For a second, the anger vanished, and I saw the man I had married. I saw the charm that had covered the rot. He looked at me with a mixture of horror and awe, as if he had never really seen me before. He realized, in that final second, that the soft, pliable girl he thought he could mold had been made of steel all along. "Eden," he whispered. "Please." I did not answer. I walked past him, keeping a wide arc, and unlocked the door. 2 police officers and the building security manager burst into the room. They saw Liam. They saw the key in his hand. They saw the restraining order violation in flesh and blood. "Hands behind your back," one officer barked. Spinning Liam around, I watched as they cuffed him. I watched the metal click shut. I watched them march him out into the hallway, his head hanging low. His life as a respectable man effectively over. The door closed. The silence returned. But this time, it was deeper. It was permanent. I stood in the living room for a long time, listening to the distant wail of the sirens fading into the snowy night. I did not cry. I did not feel a surge of adrenaline. I felt a profound, quiet stillness. I walked over to the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of cold water. I took a sip, feeling it wash away the dust of the last 7 years. Then I walked over to the sofa and sat down. On the coffee table lay a new notebook. It was not the spiral-bound one hidden under the mattress. It was a beautiful, leather-bound journal with crisp, white pages. I opened it to the first page. There were no timelines of abuse. There were no logs of stolen money. There were no plans for revenge. I picked up a pen. I wrote a header at the top of the page. Plans that are only mine. I touched the pen to the paper. Ready to write the first sentence of a story where I was the only author, the ink flowed, and the past dissolved. I was alone, and I was free. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Please comment down below where you are tuning in from. I would love to connect with you all. Do not forget to subscribe to the Zoe Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and smash that hype button so this story can reach more people who need to hear it.